Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. Don't forget, if you've been enjoying these videos, click the like and subscribe button and comment below and let me know what you've learned. In this video we'll be looking at fossils as further evidence for evolution and also fossils as evidence for extinction. We'll also cover a number of ways in which a species can go extinct. So what are fossils? Well, fossils are the remains of plants or animals that no longer exist. For example, dinosaurs, ammonites, trilobites. In fact, here you can see a picture of two people stood next to a giant ammonite that they found on the south coast of England in an area known as the Jurassic Coast. Similar fossils are always found in rocks of the same age, showing which organisms lived at which times. And as the rocks change in age from older to younger, they show evidence of a sequence of change as one species gradually evolves into another by natural selection. So you can see on this diagram here, the youngest rocks will always be at the top and the oldest rocks will be at the bottom, as the rocks have been created by the deposition of sediment over time. So any organisms that died and got trapped in that sediment will have become fossilized at a certain period of time. So the further down a cliff face, for example, you look, the older the fossils will be. So as we say, you can often therefore see a sequence of slow, gradual changes of one species into another. One example of this is the horse. And fossils will show a slow, gradual change in the bone structure of the legs of a horse, leading from small animals with 4 toes to larger animals with a single central toe, which we now call the hoof. And here on these diagrams here, you can see the fossilized evidence for the evolution of the horse. The fossil record of a horse is very complete, and it shows a slow, gradual change from a small animal here, about 0.4 meters tall, with 4 well spread out toes adapted to living in swamps and walking on soft ground, to the modern horse, which is a large animal with a single toe, forming a hoof which is adapted for running on hard ground. So if you study the diagrams here, you can see the slow and gradual change in the height, in the shape of the toes. There's that central toe becoming more prominent, but still 2 smaller toes behind. The height of a horse is increased. There's our central hoof, but the height has remained the same. And then about 2 million years ago, there is a gradual change in the height. And you can see the same over here on these actual fossils, photos of fossils of the horses. So you can see the slow gradual change in the hooves of the fossil, and a gradual change in the shape of the fossilized horse skull, which leads to evidence of evolution, a slow gradual change from one species to another over time. You can contrast that slow gradual change of one species into another over the sort of 20 million years that the horse has evolved with shark evolution, because sharks are one of the organisms that show very little change over time. So shark fossils from millions of years ago show little variation compared with modern sharks. They evolved a form that was well adapted to their environment, and since the environment has not changed much in millions of years, neither have the sharks. And you can see evidence of that in this fossilized shark tooth here, and compare that with the teeth of a shark alive today. There has been very little adaptation and evolution over millions of years in this particular species because the environment has been very, very stable. However, it is important to remember that the fossil record is complete, and this is due to the following. Soft-bodied organisms are rarely preserved. This means we don't have a record of some of the earliest forms of life. Very early fossils have been destroyed due to tectonic activity like volcanoes and earthquakes, for example, subduction zones destroying seabed rock. Fossils are destroyed by geological activity such as mountain formation, erosion, deposition, and most organisms that die do not become fossils, as the correct conditions for fossilization are extremely rare. It's also important to remember that many fossils have yet to be discovered, so we just don't have a complete fossil record that tells us the evolutionary history of every species alive on the planet at the moment today. However, the fossils that have been discovered give a good snapshot of life at different times of the Earth's history and provide evidence for plate tectonics and for evolution. Fossils also provide a lot of evidence for extinction. Since life began over 3.5 billion years ago, over 4 billion species have evolved and existed. There are around 8.7 million species alive today, so most species that have ever existed are now extinct. So what is extinction? What's our definition that we must learn? Well, extinction is the permanent loss of all members of a species. So as the environment changes, a new species may evolve that are better suited to the new environmental conditions. The new species will be more successful, and it will outcompete the older species, which will gradually go extinct. And the only evidence that the older species existed will be in the fossil record. There are many different causes of extinction, but they all involve a change in the environment. For example, a change in temperature, or new predators coming along, or new diseases, or new, more successful competitors. So let's have a look in more detail at some of those causes of extinction. And the first one that we will look at are new predators. New predators can wipe out prey items very quickly if the prey do not have adaptations to avoid them. New predators may evolve by natural selection or move into the area, sometimes with human involvement. The classic example of this is the dodo. The dodos existed on the Indian Ocean island of the Mauritius, and they went extinct within about 50 years of humans discovering them, particularly the Western world, when Dutch sailors brought rats with them that ate all the eggs of the dodo, as well as the Dutch sailors hunting them themselves. So the rats would predate the eggs, acting as a new predator, and humans would predate the dodos themselves, acting as a new predator. And they were wiped out and went extinct incredibly quickly. Largely because they existed on only a small number of islands and were very, very isolated. A more recent example are hedgehogs. Now, hedgehogs are acting as new predators that have been brought to the Scottish island of North Uist. They were initially introduced to eat slugs, but they bred rapidly and started eating the eggs of rare seabirds. Those seabirds are now critically endangered due to this new predator that has been introduced by humans into its environment. The birds are unable to adapt quickly enough, and therefore the hedgehogs are having a huge impact on their population numbers. The second of our list of causes of extinction are new diseases. A new disease can cause a species which cannot adapt quickly enough to go extinct, and this often happens on islands where the population is close together and the disease can rapidly spread. One classic example of this is the Tasmanian devil, which is now dying of a form of cancer that seems to be communicable, and it can spread between the individual Tasmanian devils. In fact, you can see on this diagram here, on this image, a Tasmanian devil which has that cancer, and you can see the tumour on its face there. So this new disease, which we don't know where it's come from, is having a huge impact on the population size of the Tasmanian devils, which are now critically endangered. Another cause of extinction is new competitors. One species can cause another species to go extinct due to competition. The more successful species will outcompete the less successful species. The species will often be competing for, the two species will often be competing for food or water or space or other resources. And there's two classic examples of this. In the UK, the American grey squirrel here is outcompeting the native British red squirrel, which is now endangered. In Australia, the introduction of rabbits around 100 or so years ago has caused several native species to become endangered because the rabbits are outcompeting the native species. The rabbits are better adapted and more successful in the Australian environment. In fact, the Australians have built a number of fences across Western Australia here to try and prevent the movement of rabbits from Eastern Australia towards the Western Australia. So they're trying to protect the native species by use of rabbit-proof fences. It's important to remember that there is new evidence which is now available to scientists studying evolution. For example, they've been able to study the genetic differences that exist between species. Scientists can observe how genes can be passed from one generation to the next, and new fossils are being discovered all the time, which adds further evidence and further weight to the idea of evolution by natural selection. I hope you've enjoyed this video on fossils and the causes of extinction. If you have, please comment below and let me know what you've learnt, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.